Hello YouTube, and today not from the Isle of Man, unless Ramsey has really radically changed. No, I'm in sunny Malta for work. We just wrapped up another gambling conference here. It's Friday, I'm about to head to the airport, and I want to do a quick video to give you a glimpse at my day job, but to also explain a little bit more how the whole gambling side and the Isle of Man are connected. Because when you look at the Isle of Man, either just you follow the news or you're thinking of moving there, you're looking at jobs, you will hear the term eGaming a lot. And eGaming is essentially a modern term for gambling. We used to just call it online gambling in the olden days. I've been doing this over 20 years now, since the industry really started in the Isle of Man. And yeah, we just used to call it online gambling, but then someone was like, oh, eGaming sounds so nice. So now we call it eGaming. And we just attended a conference here. There are loads of these conferences. You can probably go for one a week these days if you really wanted to. Certainly one a month, it's crazy. And I wanted to A, give you a glimpse at such an event and at this world, and B, explain to you, where the Isle of Man fits in and how it may also be an opportunity for you. So gambling in general, we divide it in two parts, the industry. There's the land-based side, which is the likes of Las Vegas, Macau, the physical casinos. And there's the online side. And I work on the online side, and this is really where the Isle of Man is also biggest, in particular in online licensing. Now, I started my career 20 odd years ago as a sports trader. So I was the guy, if you place a sports bet online with a bookmaker, then I would be the guy behind the screen taking the bet and trying to make money and beat you. It was a very manual job back then. It has changed massively. The kind of job that I did in that form just doesn't exist anymore these days. Very, very few. Back then it was good fun. I was basically a bookmaker. That's how I started. Then I went into product development, and then I sort of worked my way up and around the industry, ended up running operations, ended up setting up a few operations in the Isle of Man as well. And these days I focus on licensing, and this is where the Isle of Man is biggest still. So when you run a online gambling operation of any type, say you want to run your own casino, then if the target country where your players are, say you want to run an online casino targeting people in Germany, then Germany has its own licensing regime. So you need to go to the German government and say, one license please, and then you're allowed to operate there. However, not every country in the world has regulations yet for online gambling. We call those pre-regulated markets. We used to call them grey markets, and now someone again found a nicer term for it. We call it pre-regulated, so they don't have rules yet. So if you want to target the players there, but you want to legitimize yourself and tell your players, and of course the companies you work with, the banks you work with, other people, suppliers you work with, games providers, that you're a legitimate company, that you're crime-free, that you stick to certain anti-money laundering rules, and that kind of thing, that you have certain player protections in place as well, so you're responsible, so to say, then you can get what is called a pre-regulated market license, and that's where the Isle of Man comes in. Back when I started in the early 2000s, the world was your oyster, because hardly any countries had any kind of local license, and with an Isle of Man license you could target pretty much the whole world, because it was a new thing. It hadn't been done before. The first sportsbook, I think, was in '93. I actually know the guy who created the very first online sports betting website in the world. It was I think it was '93, Intertops, thereabout. Someone will correct me. And yeah, back then the world was your oyster. With an Isle of Man license or any other license, you could target the whole world. These days it's a lot more restrictive. A lot of governments realize there's money to be made and they bring out their own licenses. So the Isle of Man business model, as far as licensing is concerned, is changing quite rapidly, and there is a risk at the moment that we are falling behind and becoming irrelevant. It sounds dramatic, but it is a very dynamic industry that moves fast. I think we can still adapt to it and do something good. The Isle of Man has been what we call a Tier 1 license or Tier 1 jurisdiction for a good 20 years now. Tier 1 means you're at the highest level. There are certain ones, Malta is another one, where the rules are the strictest, where it's hardest to get a license, and as a result they are most respected. And if you license either here or in the Isle of Man, it's very easy for you to get banking, because any banks and the lawyers behind it, they know you're legit. You've been checked, your owners are crime-free, the money is clean, you stick to certain rules, etc. You're legit, You're legit at the highest level. That's what it really does. Now, as we have seen recently in the Isle of Man, that doesn't always mean things don't fall through the cracks, and that's just the nature of business, I suppose. At least they were caught. But yes, the Isle of Man has been a grey market or pre-regulated market jurisdiction for licenses for a long time, and this is what I focus on these days, getting people licenses, making their gambling operations legit. That's essentially what we do. It's a large part of the industry. Pretty much all companies need one of these licenses. There are other jurisdictions as well. You will hear places like Curacao, Kanawaki, Vanuatu being mentioned, and it doesn't mean they are worse licenses. They're just less strict, and some people, want to start with that before they play. Basically, you have to play at the local level before you can play in the Premier League. Think of it that way. E-gaming makes up, I think, about a quarter of the Isle of Man's economy. It's a pretty big deal. And it brought a lot of companies over, because if you get a license in the Isle of Man, you have to have a company there. If you don't want to have your own company there, like your own staff, then you can employ people like us, corporate service providers, to do it for you. That creates jobs in the Isle of Man, that creates tax income. The gambling operators also pay gambling tax. There's no corporation tax, as you know, but there is a gambling levy, 1.5% down to 0.1% depending on turnover. And that, of course, brings tax money. And as far as I'm aware, it's still about a quarter of the economy relies on e-gaming. And that is changing. The whole industry is changing fast. And by the way, I know a lot of people may not like gambling, and that's totally okay. I know there's a dark side to it. I know not everyone appreciates the industry, and I will never deny there's a dark side to it, which is why I am working in the licensing side, in the side that tries to make people legit and tries to get them to stick to certain rules. So, to make it as safe as we can have it. But yeah, we'll never deny that, some people have problems with it. And if you have an Isle of Man license, for example, there is a requirement to have player protection tools. If someone wants to self-exclude or has a problem, you have to, look after them and make sure that harm is reduced. So that's basically what we do. But the industry is changing. Now, one thing I do like about the industry, if you want to work in it, it's a very good industry to work in, then, please try. I'm happy to refer you to recruitment agents that I know. It's essentially a tech industry, that's what we are, but it's a very young industry. Young in terms of it's barely 30 years old as a whole, and it has grown massively. When I first went to these conferences, and the first ones were in London, called ICE, still around, but it was in Earl's Court. It was tiny, and they, I knew half the room there because it was literally a tiny industry. Now, 30,000 people in one room here, it's massive, and it's just one conference. We've been to others in like Lisbon, Barcelona, flying to Bangkok in a couple of weeks. It's grown massively, but it's a very young industry also in terms of the people who work in it. It's very diverse. We're from all over the world. And it's also pretty much, maybe not 50-50, but there's a very high percentage of females who work in it. And we don't need quotas for that. A lot of the CEOs, a lot of the senior managers are females, because this is an industry where you have to get up and go, and the determination and the drive, you can really go very far very quickly. We are very, very fair as an industry, and that's what I love about it. It's very young, it's very get up and go. Many, many opportunities, especially in the corporate side, especially on the Isle of Man. If you look for a job, it's either tech or it's corporate. Compliance is still growing, everything gets more regulated, so if you want to work in compliance, you pick the right field, so your job is safe. So yeah, I just wanted to basically give you a glimpse at this and explain a little bit. So if you want to work in the fields, the Isle of Man is still a good place. It's changing. It will change, I think, quite a bit in the next few years, because other jurisdictions are nipping on our heels and are more modern than we are. And yeah, we have to adapt to that, which I think is happening at the moment. Hopefully it's happening. But yeah, that's really it. So I just want to give you a glimpse at this. So if you hear the term e-gaming, it means online gambling. It means the Isle of Man gives out licenses to make online gambling companies legit. Now, the Isle of Man likes it when companies go there and set up their offices there and operations. But really, it's mostly the lawyers who are there, the compliance people, the legal side, and the operations are often somewhere else in the world. And that's purely for practical reasons. You just cannot find the premises in the Isle of Man, and especially you cannot find the staff. Gambling operations are huge. The one I worked for in Asia, we had, I think, 50 people in the Isle of Man office when I started, and over 1,000 out in Manila. You can't do that in the Isle of Man. But there are still opportunities, so if you're interested, drop me a line. And yeah, that's basically what I wanted to do. Just want to give you a quick glimpse at my world, explain a little bit what e-gaming is. And that's it from me, so I have to head to the airport now. Taxi is coming. Next time I'll speak to you, we'll hopefully be back in the Isle of Man. Please like and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.